Miss Computer. Okay, so I like to light a candle for my angels to invite them in. Our angels.
Oh, beautiful.
And the last nubbin of my incense for
What
this
kind of
morning.
that? What is that, sage?
This is I believe it's called prosperity. So I'm not sure what flavor, but that's
bring that in
for some ancestors. Let them come and play.
Cool.
And then I like to just take a deep breath with you. And stretch out your arms.
Oh, I love this. It's like
and a big hug, a big self-love hug. It's like
I love you, me.
I'm hugging you. I love you, me.
The quarantine hug.
Yes.
You know what? Let me go. I'm just going to step outside and tell them like I'm on a call just so maybe they won't knock in case they want to.
Okay, perfect. Hey, kitty cat.
Hey, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to take a call. So, you know, if you thought you needed to knock or something, just to like wait a bit. Thank you. All right, you can't. They're like making noise, but I can't really hear anything.
I can't hear anything. It sounds good on my end.
Okay. All right. So stretch, hug. I'm ready.
Okay. Welcome to the Why She Whistles podcast, Queen Helene.
Oh my God, I love it.
I love that too. Helene is a stellar human being, a mama, an author, a queer advocate, palm reader, and just an overall rainbow of a human being. So I'm so happy to have you on.
Oh my gosh, thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, of course. Yes. So let's start at the beginning. And I want to ask you a question. What helps you align with the power of your positive vibration? Right off the bat, like
that's a big one.
just giving you
just dive in.
One for the listeners, like what helps you feel positive?
You know, I would say what helps me feel positive is to allow myself to lean into the negative sometimes, you know? Like I feel like we can get this messaging that is always like, you know, the law of attraction and, you know, just all these positivity messages. But there are days when you're just going to feel like crap and like that's part of the process. So like letting yourself feel that and like knowing that that's okay, I feel like takes some of that pressure off of you to get back to the positive. So I have this piece of art in my house that's two hands and it says, give yourself grace. And one of my favorite artists, Kristen Ramsey, who does a lot of, you know, positive art, uses hands, which is why I love your stuff so much. But I think it's important just to like allow yourself and it's never, I don't think it's possible unless you're the Dalai Lama or something, to be like in a state of bliss all the time. You know, we're humans. So just allowing.
I love that. Just be authentic.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was talking to a friend about emotions and letting your emotions move and letting that energy have motion. So
yes, and a lot of people right now, you know, there's so much self-work going on, and I feel like this time, this like pause right now that we're in the world is allowing us this time to do work, but not being like, I need to fix everything right now. Like, I'm too angry. Okay, well, if you're angry, you know, you can like look at that, but you don't have to like, you know, remove that from your personality. Just like funnel it into something that's productive. So right now I'm like really aware of spiritual bypassing, if you know what that is. And that's when
no, this is new to me.
Yes, and it's when people use the work to distract themselves or really just as an excuse to not live the work, you know? Yeah. So I like people, I'm aware of it, like you can read all the books that you want, you can listen to all the podcasts, and you can, pull all your tarot cards or whatever. But I think it's also important that you make sure you put yourselves into situations where you will be challenged in the ways that you are trying to work, because, you can't really do that all on your own. You have to live, you know?
Oh, just hitting us with the wisdom right
Oh,
off the bat. I thank
yeah.
you.
You know what? But I need to take my own advice. So this is as much for me as it is for you.
Okay, so palm reading. So
Yes.
epic. I love looking at your Instagram, and I learn something new every time I go and like dive into your words and your art that you post and the pictures and photos, and learning is
Yeah.
always amazing. And so learning about yourself, I feel like helps set you up for like, oh, this is who I get to be here. Like, this is so cool. And so I want to know, where did you start on your
Hmm.
palm reading journey?
This is where I talk a lot because it's kind of a big story. But
Perfect.
I do
The
want to
mic is
say you,
yours.
you hit the nail on the head with using palm reading as a tool to learn about yourself, because that is my number one. A lot of people think that palm reading is this predictive, art of divination where you're going to find out when you're going to die and like all these big prophecies. I look at it more as a tool of self-reflection, just like astrology, just like tarot cards. But I also look at it in a way where, it's a very important art to me because it's on your body. And so I think people think that that story or what it's saying about you is going to be concrete and unchangeable. But I also believe that it's in your hands to change anything that you don't like via free will and all that good stuff. So awareness is everything. As far as my story of how I became a palm reader, I've only been reading palms for 2.5 years. And 5 years ago, I was an art director. My background is graphic design, and I was associate art director at Steve Madden headquarters, and then I was art director of advertising and publishing in Macmillan Publishers, which is super cool because it was in the Flatiron Building. And I was like, I don't know, I just thought it was super cool. Yeah.
Big
That's why I
names.
have, yeah. So I have this like Flatiron Building picture behind me because I like to be like, yeah, I work there. But anyways, I loved those titles, and I did love a lot of aspects of the job, and I reached my career goal pretty quickly coming out of art school, because honestly I started my career path way late. I think I graduated from Savannah College of Art and Design when I was 29 or 30. But I was missing something, I wasn't it was very stressful for me. I deal with anxiety a lot, and so I would have panic attacks while trying to get to work. Like, just wanted to do anything but actually get to the job. And I started getting medicated for that, and that was very helpful. But still, like, it was so much pressure for me. And if you're familiar with astrology, I'm double Cancer, and I'm super sensitive. And to be in a creative environment where it's all the cooks in the kitchen all the time and just feeling like you're never good enough. And I, was kind of looking for an out. And I was 35 when I found out I was pregnant, because I was married to a man and that I'd met in art school. And so when I found out I was pregnant, it was kind of the perfect opportunity to go somewhere else, to leave New York City. So we moved back to Atlanta, which kind of felt like home because I'd lived there for a little bit. And, I was just very afraid of having my baby. Like, there's a lot of fear, because also I wasn't working and I just had all this time to like think about it. And it was just fear, 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 like of the delivery. And so when it came time for me to deliver, I feel like that fear really manifested. And I had a pretty traumatic delivery, and that included forceps and, kind of getting rebuilt and, having surgery and things like that. And my baby was a very unhappy baby. They call that colicky, which I'm just like, I just think she was miserable. Like
Mm.
some spirits, I feel like don't like being babies. They're like, I want to get out of this. I can't talk. I
Give
can't
me
whatever.
the
And I feel like,
power. Give me the
yes,
power. I'm ready
I
to
feel
use
like
it.
that's exactly. She's a Scorpio, Leo rising, Aries moon, and it is like I can see it in her now. But anyways, I had postpartum depression for a solid year, like really bad, and I'm not sure. I was never diagnosed officially. Maybe even a twinge of PTSD. Like I still deal with triggers from that situation. And I was doing all of the work of taking care of this unhappy newborn while I was physically healing, emotionally healing, and depressed. And it was just a really, really, really dark time. Thank goodness I wasn't working and didn't have to work. But there came a time where I woke up, and that was September 2017. And at the time, I wasn't really into much of the spiritual side of things. Like I was aware, but I wasn't like into it. Um, and it was a full solar eclipse, I believe, in the sign of Leo. And it was that big solar eclipse. Everybody went out and they got the glasses. Remember that? Um, and I was like, I have to change. Um, and I did, and I changed it a big way. I came out as queer to my husband, which had always been a part of my past. I used to identify as bisexual, and he knew that. But I was just going through some, very uncomfortable feelings and marriage and sexuality and all that stuff. And my daughter at that time was 2, so still tiny. And we had a home, like we had stability and all the things that come with the American dream. And I was just like, I don't. This doesn't fit me right now. I'm not. My creativity was stifled. I wasn't connected to anybody. I was isolated and I was sad. So yeah, I asked him for a divorce, and during that process I was freaking out because I am used to stability, and I decided to cash out my 401k, and I bought my 1955 renovated vintage camper, which I did not renovate myself. This wonderful woman, Sasha Glass, did, and it was beautiful, and that just allowed me to remove that fear of like, I'm going to be homeless. I didn't even know at the time I was going to use that for a business. But over time, I did start kind of putting that into the equation. I thought I was going to do nails out of it, which is, in the same area, but not palm reading. So the way that the palm reading idea came about was I was like looking, like most people are looking when they come to get a palm reading, like a palm reading. They want direction or like a breadcrumb or like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what is my purpose? And I was doing that in a big way and getting my cards read and just talking to everybody. And they all were like, it's design. And I'm like, no, I don't want it to be design. But then I was getting my hair done with my best friend / hairstylist. And we were just drinking wine. And I was kind of looking at the Atlanta community with a marketing mind. And I'm like, okay, we have Reiki, we have tarot cards, we have all these intuitive chiropractors and things like that. What are we missing? And I was about to go to New Orleans. And so I just I think about New Orleans and palm readers. And I was like, what even is that? So I went to New Orleans. I got my palm read. It was an experience, but it was very much what you think of when you think of palm reading. It's like, oh yeah. And I don't even think she was really looking at the hand or anything. So it was probably more of like a psychic thing. But I was like, that is not something I could do. But my friend dared me to do it at a Christmas pop-up like a couple weeks later. So I like bought all these books that were super nerdy and like huge. And I was completely overwhelmed, and that's why I designed the purple sheet that comes in my palm reading kit. And that honestly was a hit. Like I was just driving, and that is when I get a lot of my ideas, just like driving. And I was just like, purple sheet, silver pen, and I kind of broke down the basics of what I thought was important to somebody to know about themselves on not a surface level, but like some of the palmistry books can get really, really deep into things like the shape of your cuticles and the hair on your arm, and like just dig, dig, dig. And sometimes I feel like it's not healthy to like, and sometimes it doesn't come together to tell an accurate story, or it isn't helpful. So I wanted to make it helpful to me in terms of having like a process, and helpful to the person I was reading in terms of like, okay, but what would somebody want to know? What's the most important things in palmistry? So the first night, I was so nervous, and I read palms for
That's
5.
that is so good for us to hear, and the
Yeah,
listeners, just because it's like you have a book now and you're on the other side of that, but to hear that
yeah.
you were nervous
Oh my
that first
gosh.
night is
I
like,
still get nervous. I still get nervous. In fact, it's almost like when I used to go to work in the corporate world, like I would get nervous because in a creative or an intuitive environment, you don't know what to expect. But my mantra for myself in my life is just to stay open, you know? And honestly, the first 6 months of my palm readings, I was learning as much as I was reading. And it was like this connection of trying to figure it out with the person. It's like, oh, this is supposed to mean this, but like, does it relate to your life? And I started stepping away from like all the things the book said, because a lot of those books are from the 1800s. And it's like, life is different now. People are different now. We're living in all
yeah,
kinds of different, yeah. And those people that were part of that beginning journey are some of my best friends, and we have this deep connection. And I feel like it's, you know, just talking about that, like just staying open to what could come out of it and not trying to force a situation or, be somebody you're not. And the more open you are, that's literally going to open that intuition. And, I've always said that palm reading isn't a psychic thing, and I'm not psychic. Like, but man, I've been having some like crazy psychic stuff happen to me, and I'm learning a lot about like psychic protection and stuff like that. And when I say psychic, I don't mean that I have like visions about the future. It's a lot of signs, and like just a lot of hits. Like I just know when to do something, or I know what to say, or I say something that someone's like, "I can't believe you said that," like things like that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so
How
I'm
I
glad
think
that.
of when people say psychic or psyche, like
Mm,
we in our Western world we're like sixth sense, like that's no, woo.
yeah,
But your mind is sensing constantly.
yeah,
And so
oh
that's your
yeah,
sixth sense. And like
right.
you can tap into your sense of smell more in a day, or you
Hmm.
can tap into your sense of intuition or your sixth sense of the mind. So when you're
Yeah.
saying
So
that, it's like, yeah,
a couple of weeks ago, I had like a whole other, very similar to my divorce. Like I just felt like it was this insane spiritual awakening, and I was freaking out. My nervous system was like I was shaking, couldn't sleep, I could not eat, and I had to reach out to this woman I knew of, and I was like, you know what? I'm just trying to rest and take care of myself. But like the signs and everything like won't stop coming. And she was like, well, think of your third eye, like it's got a volume dial, like just envision that and like turn it down a little bit, and then also just be like, give me. I only want ask for like the signs and things that are helpful and your highest good in mind and things like that. But um, I never thought that that would be something that I was,
that's so
trying to manage. I always thought it was going to be so cool to be psychic, but I'm like,
stop
leave me alone.
it.
Yeah, and psychic, honestly, like that word used to scare me, but I do see it as, it's the same thing as intuitive, you know? Um, so back to my story. So actually, 3 months into reading palms, I was still processing my divorce. A lot was going on in my life, but I just had this hit that like, okay, people are really liking this, and this is fun, and there isn't many modern palm readers, and certainly not in a way where it makes it so easy and like literally hands-on, like doing the handprint and like marking it all up. So I reached out to an old contact who honestly like in publishing, who I didn't have, like we weren't close, but I just trusted him. I was like, I have this idea, just tell me if it's stupid. I'm not asking for help. And he just immediately like shot me over to a literary agent who happens to be the same agent as Kim Kranz and another of the Wild Unknown and a lot of other great spiritual artists. And I flew up there, read her poem, and then we put together a proposal and pitched it, and there was a bidding war. And it's ironic that the publishing imprint that picked me up is Harper Design, which is the design imprint of HarperCollins, and that was huge. So yeah, I probably worked on it for a year, but really only knocked it out, I think, like over Christmas with my editor, and had a couple of nervous breakdowns, as one does when you're working on big creative projects. So yeah, it's been out since October 25th, and it isn't seeing the success that the publishers were hoping to, but I think it's a slow burn, and I think that kind of where we are right now, people are looking for new ways to look at themselves, and so yeah, I still
And
have
it's
hope.
so timeless.
And
So
yeah, I have
timeless.
hope. And I have other projects in mind, and I also think success is like whatever you want it to be. I'm successful to me. I don't care if it's not successful to the publisher. I'm like, I did this. I put a thing
Wrote a
out.
damn book.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so good to hear, honestly, your authenticity with like, I was doing this amazing thing, I got these publishing deals, and I was going through a divorce and having nervous
Yeah.
breakdowns.
Well, even with this kind of awakening I'm mentioning that happened like a month ago, it's like for me, I feel like rock bottom is really kind of, I don't know why it happens this way, but that's where you really find what you're looking for. And it's because you're getting rid of the things that you shouldn't, that aren't serving you, that are holding you back, that are dimming your light. And I just had to do that again. And then I'm like, I feel reborn. But it's like first, it's the tower card. Like you kind of have to die a little bit first, and then you rise back up like Phoenix. Um, so my favorite thing to do is inspire people, because a lot of people that are getting palm readings are in lost places, and I like to use my story and my perspective to be like, you know what, you may feel like it's the end of everything, but it's actually going to be a beautiful beginning. Just like stay open, take care of
Mm.
yourself, think about what you want, and don't block yourself. If I had never emailed that, if I had been like, oh, this is a stupid idea, and like never emailed that editor, like this, I don't know where I'd be. I might be
Uh,
miserable in another design job. And I feel like the digital age makes it so easy for us to reach out to people. And just the more energy you put into what you want, and the more you trust yourself and don't block yourself, I feel like you can really make stuff happen. And that's like all manifestation is to me. You can read a whole book about it. It's just like listen to yourself and like put something out there.
yeah. Ooh, I love it. Um, we were talking about Elizabeth Gilbert
Oh,
on our last talk.
I'm
Yeah,
not worthy.
calm down.
Yeah,
And
she is my, oh God.
I
Yeah,
just like, not to compare your story, it's so unique. But like
that would be a huge compliment to be compared.
to have her and to hear and I have the perfect life, and like we right now what I'm trying to teach people is just like make your own decisions, just like
Yeah.
think for yourself, think outside
Well,
of outside of the box. And so
life is never going to be perfect. There is never one moment where you're like, this is all exactly how I want it to be. And if there is that moment, it's not going to last that long, because that's not life. So there's my favorite poem, and it opens my book, is Rumi, and it's The Guest House. And it's really about how, you have to look at the things that cycle through your life, and the fear and the challenges, and see that as like they're just guests, and they're gonna leave.
yeah.
But yeah.
So to hear your story of I had the house, I have Parker, I have
Mm.
my husband, all the things that we're supposed to be climbing the ladder, I have the dream job. Like, where did you have it in the back of your mind? Like, this isn't, how did you know? How did you, like, what was that
Yeah,
decision making like?
that's
I'm
actually a
always
really,
curious of like when people make
yeah,
these huge decisions, like did you have this nagging in the back of your mind that was
yes. I
always
mean, I did have a nagging from my honeymoon. We honeymooned directly after we got married, and it just didn't feel right. I was like, oh, like I just had this heaviness, and we worked on it for a very long time. We were married for 7 years. I honestly think it was kind of the mental health issues I was having following the birth of my child. They also say babies bring blessings. So I didn't feel like it was a blessing at the time, but now maybe I look at it as a blessing. And yeah, there was other things that was happening because of social media. People like come out of the out of the walls, and I had reconnected with an ex-girlfriend from college, and it wasn't even that I was like, oh, I love you again. It was more like, oh, remember who you were then? Like,
Ooh.
why aren't you that now? Could you be that now? And I would start thinking about, like, wouldn't it be cool to like raise this kid with a woman? And really that just kind of led to me being like, dreaming about it, and then being like, but you know what? Like, you can have that if you want it. Um, so yeah, it was painful. I mean, it was a very painful thing to do, to get divorced, because he he wasn't expecting that, and being left with a young child, there's a lot of guilt and shame and stuff I've had to work through, and that he's still working through. But you know,
Sorry to bring it up. It's just like,
oh no, I'm an open book. I'm an open book.
and I think that we can learn a lot from you, and like just
Yeah,
and life, and just how messy but the
yeah,
beautiful painting mess.
yeah. So I had always tried to make my father proud. That's why I was doing all the things. That's why I was working in New York, and that's why I was, married and had a kid, and always trying to be like corporate. And you know, I'm 40 now, and it's been this only last couple years where I'm like, no, this is my life. Like, I can't live it to make anybody else happy, especially if deep down I know it's not making me happy. So ultimately, you can't make decisions based on how it's going to affect other people. All you can do is try to do it the right way, you know, um, and with communication, and try to have love. But, it's hard. Making changes like that are super hard, and you feel like the world is against you, and you feel selfish. But think about all the women that, you know, in Victorian times and things like that, like they weren't, divorce is like a newly, kind of popular
Mm.
thing. So, yeah, it's a lot. I'm still processing, but it also goes to show, like, even though I have that story and I have this success of having the book, um, like I'm at that place again where I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's next? And it's almost like it's a repetitive cycle, and I really think astrology has a lot to do with it. So if people want like great perspective on their path, I really recommend getting like an in-depth natal chart reading. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, this is a creative cycle and a life cycle that I feel like is gonna repeat itself. I'm gonna have to keep reinventing and keep facing these challenges, because I really feel like we are on this earth. I believe in reincarnation, past lives, all that stuff. I believe we're here to learn lessons, and we don't get to move on until we learn them. You know?
Totally. Thank you for being so open and honest and authentic.
Sure.
We got the heavy life stuff out of the way.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
listeners got to learn a lot from you firsthand.
Yeah. So I'm very optimistic though. Like, and I didn't mention that, doing the palm readings out of my vintage camper. My camper is like pink on the outside and unicorn themed, and so I'm really like, this is light. Like, come in. And even though, I use my heaviness and what I go through as a way to relate to other people. So holding space and having really deep empathy is my power. Vulnerability is my power, and being able to just hold whatever comes through in terms of readings, because of what I've been through. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Great transition into palm reading. We get into the
Mm.
fun stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay, so what is your favorite thing to read on palms?
Favorite in what way? My favorite in terms of like putting the story together is something, it's called the line of stability. So we have four main lines on our hands. We have the heart line, which is at the top, then we have the head line, which kind of comes across the middle, the lifeline that swings around the thumb and does not mean, it does not show when you're going to die. It's more of a record of your like vitality, like how, like if you're living your best life or not. And then the line of stability can either come up the center of the hand from the bottom or up from the pad at the bottom under your pinky finger. And that to me shows what your goal in life is. And if it comes up the center, that's usually like you're looking for traditional stability, like the logistics, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, like you want the, you know, the BMW or, you know, just kind of the American dream that I was talking about. And sometimes if that's a very deep, long line, it's because you have support and stability, like you are married, or you have money in your family, or you're just well taken care of, or you just have no fear and you're like, I'll always take care of myself. So all of this is interpretation based, and I honestly, it's just the intuition when I'm working with somebody that tells me like which one of these avenues to come from. But when it comes from that pad at the bottom of your hand under your pinky finger, that is the Mount of Luna down there, and that's where all the magic and like spirituality and inspiration and intuition is. So that's somebody who's really trying to like, you know, live purposefully and be creative or help other people. And oftentimes, especially as people get older, you'll see that they want to have those two types of lines of stability to connect, you know, because I feel like in these times, like that is the goal. I know it's the goal for me. I would love to be able to support myself in a way that is authentic and inspiring and creative. And so that's my favorite thing to see, especially when they come together, because it's like, oh, you're going to get it, you know, and all this stuff works on a timeline. So it's often more midlife for people to figure that out.
What if I
Here we go.
I'm reading.
But
What if you have two?
So that's multiple ways. And
Cool.
some people, I have like literally 5 lifelines. So what that means to me is like that's my constant reinvention. Like this is when I was a designer. This is when I'm a plumber. This is when I was straight. This is when I'm gay. Whatever. If you have 2 coming up from that Mount of Luna, that's 2 paths that are going to get you there. So you could look at one of those as your podcast. You could look at one of those as like some other kind of healing work or just creativity. But yeah, it's all interpretation and whatever feels right to you.
Cool.
I'll tell you what my least favorite lines to read are. And those are called the affection lines, which are on the outside of your hand underneath your pinky, and they represent relationships. And man, people really want to get like nitty gritty with those. And I can see divorce.
I remember I came to you and I was like, my last palm reader told me I was gonna have 3 kids. You're like,
it's not. Kids are really, really hard on the hands. And honestly, like maybe other people do read that as kids and it works for them, but just not in my experience. To me, it's usually relationships, and it's not necessarily marriages. It's your most deep, impactful relationships. So it's not like all the dates and all the like little, you know, texts or whatever. It's like the ones that really help make you who you are in terms of romantic connections. But oftentimes there's this one line that's further down on that pad, right, where the heart line starts. And that's like, I don't know, I have a sense of humor with these things. And I'm like, why are we all like hooking up when we're in our 80s? Like, I call it nursing home booty. Because if somebody's like getting a reading with their partner and they're like, why do we have these other lines? I'm like, well, you know, sometimes people have fun in the old folks home. I don't
know. That is funny.
I'm ridiculous.
That is funny. Oh my goodness. There's just so many.
There's a lot.
When you really look at your hand, there's so many.
In terms of the lines, like every hand is totally different, and it's really just looking at the overall like shape and quality and color and how many lines says so much about somebody. So first of all, I usually look at the proportions of the palm versus the fingers to talk about astrology because they represent the 4 signs. So I am a double Cancer Leo rising, and I have a water shaped hand because it's a pretty long hand, but the proportions are equal. And then my lines, like I have a billion lines. I'll show you. I know your viewers can't see, and they're really dark and red, and that's
Yeah.
fire. That's movement, anxiety, and like that is just so me. But the more lines you have, the more energetically sensitive you are. The A lot of earthy type people or signs like Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, they will only have a couple lines because they are more compartmentalized and more grounded. But air signs and water signs, when I see a Pisces hand, I know right away. I'm like, you're Pisces.
I'm a Pisces.
Are you?
Yeah.
So you hold your hand up. You probably have a longer hand too. Go. Okay, so the way I know a Pisces is because usually they have a lot of weight at their hands at the bottom. So that's the amount of Luna over here, which is that intuition, and then the amount of Venus, which is love and pleasure. And when the weight is down there, it's all the feels. And so, yeah, I have an ex who kind of taught me that, so I always pick on Pisces.
And
But
that
yeah,
makes so much sense. It just makes sense. Logically, it just does.
yeah, it's my background in visual, well, in graphic design. That's visual communication, so that's really helpful for me in terms of like my eyes. It just makes sense.
Are there any symbols that we can look for? I've heard like triangles and
Yeah, so a lot of people ask about that M in your palm, and they're like, does that mean money? That's one thing. That is one I don't really go for. It's if that's fun for you, that's fine. But that's not. I don't like look at people's hands and like you have the M for money. Yeah, triangles, squares, any kind of like hard geometric shape are strengtheners. So if you are going through a hard time in your life, you might have a triangle over it, and that means like, yeah, but this is happening for a reason, or you're protected. The reason my brand is called Handful of Stars is because stars on the hands, which often just look like asterisks, like an X on a line, that's where the magic is. So some people have it at the end of their headline, and that just means like there's something about the way that you think that's really special. Sometimes people will have it on a mount, which are the fleshy parts that go around your hand, and that means that whatever archetype that's on is really special, especially if it is on what's called the Mount of Apollo, which is underneath your 4th finger, and that is a dominant mount. If you look at your hand like you're holding a tray like a waitress, and you see it kind of like a butt, then that means you are gifted in creativity and or healing, because Apollo was the god of art and medicine. But if there's a star on that mount as well, it's kind of like, okay, and then level up. Like you're going to be seen for this, or there's something really important that you're going to, put out into the world. It's yeah. So Jupiter is underneath the 1st finger. If there is a star there, that would be somebody who is a natural leader who would probably be successful in that way. So yeah, I really recommend. I mean, honestly, I like people to buy my book, but there's all kinds of resources online. Just starting really basic, like what are the lines? What are these mounts? Like which ones are me? And then you kind of go, okay, but what are the symbols and the marks? X's can be blocks, but that doesn't have to make you feel bad. I actually have what's called healer's marks on my hand, and they're blocked because that's something that like I don't know, I'm uncomfortable with, like, because I feel like healers are like these, angel perfect people, and I'm like just not I'm not that. But yeah, you can really dive as deep as you want to. I just really encourage people not to drive themselves crazy looking for the negatives or being envious of like someone, you do it with friends and they're like, I have a star. And they're like, I don't have a star.
oh,
it can be fun, but I
palm
also feel like
envy.
yes, you can like hurt your own feelings. And like, I promise you, there's something special on your hands. Just maybe not, the gold star. I did want to talk for a minute, about the 2 hands. Like, what do they mean?
Yeah.
Because that's a big question. So your dominant hand is the hand that you write with. A lot of people, that's the right hand. Some people, it's their left. The ambidextrous ones are always a little tricky. But like, I would just say, just pick one. So your
Pick your
dominant hand, the
favorite.
hand you, right. I'm like, well, which one calls to you? Like, anyways. So your dominant hand, the hand you write with, represents you in the present moment. So oftentimes that hand actually has a story on it that has a little more like hesitation. Maybe the lines aren't as long, maybe they're lighter, maybe you see things like breaks on them, which is like times of shift or like times of crisis or trauma or just like, things didn't go your way. So it's kind of the hand that's freaking out more. Your opposite hand is a hand that represents your quote unquote destiny, or I like to just say your potential. But I also like to view it in terms of like your hands being a book of your life, and your right hand is like the chapter you're in now, and the other hand is like the final chapter. So it just has this knowledge and wisdom of knowing how everything is going to go. And oftentimes, I would say most times, it is this happy ending, or it's like everything makes sense now, like it's still there, it's still shown, but it's like, oh, I see why that happened. So there's a lot of healing between the two hands.
Oh, just you saying that, my heart is just like,
Oh, and
ah.
that's why I love it so much, is that I get to kind of, it's not like I want to make people feel better through a way that's not authentic. Like, I'm not just here to be like, oh, you all have happy endings. It's more like I just want people to look at life and see it as it's not supposed to be perfect. These things that are happening, they probably are happening for a reason, and it will make sense eventually. But when you're in it, it sucks. But like, you will get to that point where um, it makes sense. And yeah, it's a hard time for a lot of people right now in quarantine and with COVID and, Black Lives Matter and all that. And I see that on a lot of people's hands. It's just this time of like, WTF, like, what, there's so much. I can't handle it. Um, but I do see the lines getting stronger afterwards. So, I think that
Mm.
this is a necessary shift for our world and ourselves.
So, I always, when I'm teaching like heart stuff or journaling, I always refer to like the hands are extensions of our heart, and that
Oh,
like it's
yeah.
so, and we get to hug ourselves and hug other people, and
Oh,
because these are
yeah.
extensions of our heart. Do you have any like hand honoring practices or anything like
Hmm.
that you can share?
So I would say mudras, are very powerful. And I just want to touch on what you just talked about with it being part of our heart. Like, there is science behind this stuff. There are huge nerve endings in our hands, and there's actually a lot of chakras and things like that. There is this sculpture that an artist made a while ago, which is uh, a, a replica of the nervous system based on like where those nerve hubs are. And honestly, it's our
Mm.
mouth, it's our hands, and it's genitals. But the hands interact so much with the environment. That's why more mystic people say when you work with crystals, like, put them in your hands. So yeah, that's something I would say to work with. Like, if crystals are a thing you're into, put them in the palms of your hands. I also use, infuse like crystal oils and things like that smell good on my hands. Salt baths, like, even if that's just for your hands.
Mm.
I used to have this silly dream of like making, nail polish and hand lotion and all that stuff. I just don't think palmistry is there yet. But just being aware of um, how your hands feel and if you're clenching. And hot hands usually means you have a
Mm.
lot of energy there. So if that's something you feel like, oh, my hands are always warm, you'd probably be a great candidate to do Reiki. You probably don't even need to go get trained. Like, just kind of tap into that like energy healing on yourself or whatever. Yeah.
It's just so amazing. We have this world and we get to hop into this body here on
Yeah.
earth, and like our spirit gets to like, this
Yeah.
is, woo, this is the one that I get
I
for this lifetime.
know. And you know, I like looking at like energy tricks. And you know, just doing that thing where you pretend like you're holding a ball between your hands, like you
Yeah,
could literally feel energy there. And I know, I don't know how, is your crowd pretty woo? Because
totally.
the most
Bring it
woo.
on.
Yeah, I love the woo, but sometimes I'm like, maybe I should dial it back. But yeah, just like pretending like you're holding that ball without your hands actually touching. Yeah, is so cool. And I'm really into learning about the nervous system right now. And Dr. Joe Dispenza
Yeah.
has been somebody I'm like
We love
super
him.
into. Yes, so into him. I love how like if like I like grounded spirituality. You know, like there's
Mhm.
science, but it's also like we're gonna leave room for the energy part of it.
Mm. I know that a lot of my listeners do have children, and they're gonna wonder about their kids' palms. So can you talk about
Yeah,
that a little bit?
that is like a great question because I don't want people looking at their kids' moms and like freaking out if there's like stuff on their lifeline. So the lines and fingerprints form on our palms 5 months before we're born, so in utero. Fingerprints never change. So there's actually a really cool book called Life Prints that tells you how to interpret your fingerprints to determine your life purpose. And I do some of that, but I always try to steer people to that book. Lines change as you change. So I don't like to read too deeply into younger palms until I would say they turn about, um, 14, 16, because I feel like that's when we're really starting to step into who we are, our personality, kind of leaves the nest a little bit. Um, Anything before that, I feel like there is some like genetic things. I've read families where like they will look pretty similar, but then once you really dive in, you can see the different lives and the different personality. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't look too deeply into a kid's hand until they're teenagers. There is scientific, like clinical research of some genetic dispositions, like in terms of health and psychology, that there's marks on the hands that represent that. Of course, doctors don't really use that right now because we have DNA testing and all that other stuff. But there's a line called the Simeon line or the transverse palmar crease. And it is when the top two lines on your hands, the heart line and the head line, are actually combined as one, and they just cut right across the hand in the middle. And it's super interesting because research shows um, like something like 20% of people with Down syndrome have it. Also, babies who were in utero with the mother who used methadone and things like that. So I find that fascinating, but I do try to stay away from a lot of the health things because, as a reader, you have a lot of power to plant seeds of manifestation into people when they're very vulnerable. And so, like, I feel ethics in what you choose to read about. I've had a woman like chase me in a mall and was like, "Am I going to divorce my husband?" And I'm like, I don't, do you? Sounds like you want to, you know? Ethics.
Ethics. Okay, last before we wrap up, is there anything that listeners can just look for, like easy, super beginner friendly
Yes,
line?
yes. So I would say the Heartline is a really easy one because honestly, I read that one more symbolically than the others. And the Heartline represents our emotional self. So there's kind of three basic shapes it can be. It can be a half moon that comes from between your first two fingers at the top of your hand and curves all the way down like a big, like a half circle. If it doesn't come all the way up to the top of the hands right there between the first two fingers, but it's almost there. And then if it is really like in the hand, doesn't come up at all. So those three different shapes. The half moon to me means somebody really nurturing. So that's what I have. And again, double Cancer, but it's also like people pleasing. Like, I will do anything to make everybody happy. But it's a good line to have if you're a mother or you have pets. Just really nurturing. If it doesn't come all the way up, but almost, that's someone who still has that very open, loving nature, but their boundaries might be a bit stronger, or they might be a little more guarded or protected. If it's cuts across the hand, not like the Simeon line that would go all the way, but just stays more short and sharp in the hand. I usually see that on Aries because it's like, don't mess with me. I know what I want. I'm not gonna take anybody else's crap. So that's just someone who is very well boundaried. Another place boundaries are is actually at the end of the heart line, underneath the pinky finger. If it looks like very sharp and spiky, like barbed wire back there, those are very strong boundaries. If it is the opposite,
Mm.
if it is like light or there's not much sharpness coming off, that's like, something that you might want to work on. And not to make anybody, boundaries are hard. And that is honestly my like life lesson is boundaries. Mine on my hand are pretty screwed, but they're getting stronger.
Oh, beautiful. Thank
Yes,
you. I love
of
how
course.
you bring astrology into it and that mold of like, we're working with
Yeah,
everything. Like, this is a
right.
holistic practice.
Yeah, and when you get like the astrology reading Reiki, like I feel like people get the same messages. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Ah, Helene, thank you. Can you tell us where we can find you and where we can get your book, please?
Yes, so I am a big Instagram person, and my social handle is at handfulofstars_readings. And I post a lot on there, and I do try to be interactive every once in a while. I'm not currently accepting remote palm readings, but that might be something that I restructure and do eventually. Um, Also, the book is, you can get Handful of Stars, a palmistry guidebook, and handprinting kit is the whole name from, I like Amazon, but Urban Outfitters carries it. Anthropology carried it for a minute. TJ Maxx and Marshalls actually have pretty good deals. So just, it's a lot of places, but I do recommend supporting your indie booksellers right now because they need it.
Ah, I will try to find some good links for the book and pop them into the description.
Thank
Oh
you.
my gosh. And is there anything that you would just like to lay down sweetly for the
I
listeners?
feel like I laid down a lot and maybe too
Yeah.
much. So it's Leo season. I don't know when this is going out, but just it's Leo season. Just give me a pass.
Just ride the wave.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, thank you, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
on here. Thank you for your wisdom, ancient wisdom brought into the modern world. We love it. And we can't wait to
Thank you.
connect with you.
Awesome. Thank
To
you.
all the listeners, I cannot wait for our next chat. Go spread love, peace, and positivity. Peace out, whistlers. Stop recording.